You won't believe what just happened. Pastor Gino Jennings, a man known for never holding back, has sparked a firestorm by calling out gospel superstar Kirk Franklin. Jennings, the outspoken preacher, accused Franklin of watering down the gospel with his performances, calling them nothing more than entertainment. According to Pastor Jennings, Franklin isn't leading people closer to God, but instead, he's leading them away. So, what did Kirk Franklin do to spark this outrage from Jennings? What's at the heart of this heated feud, and what makes this story even more shocking? Trust me, this is just the tip of the iceberg, and you'll want to hear every twist and turn because things are about to get way deeper. Let's break this down. Pastor Gino Jennings has built his reputation on calling out those he believes are misleading the church, especially those in the gospel music industry. He's not one to sugarcoat things or back down from his opinions. When he turned his attention to Kirk Franklin, the music world shook. Franklin, a legend in gospel music, is known for changing the game. He brought gospel to the mainstream, blending it with hip hop, R&B, and pop, something no one had done before. But to Jennings, this fusion wasn't just a new sound, it was a betrayal. To him, Franklin wasn't just an artist pushing boundaries. He was someone who was watering down the gospel message, making it more about the performance than the message. What makes this even more interesting is the depth of the disagreement. You see, Pastor Jennings has been vocal for years about how gospel music is changing, and not in a way he approves of. He believes that gospel should be pure, sacred, and focused entirely on saving souls, not making people dance or sell records. According to him, the church has been infiltrated by what he calls secular influences, and Kirk Franklin is one of the biggest offenders. He argued that Franklin's music was no longer about glorifying God. It was about making money and pleasing the crowd. Now, you might be asking, is Jennings just stuck in the past? Or is there some truth to what he's saying? Well, let me tell you, things get even crazier when we look at what happened next. Pastor Jennings didn't just criticize Franklin's music in passing. He delivered an entire sermon dedicated to calling Franklin out. He didn't hold back. He called out Franklin's flashy outfits, his energetic stage performances, and his collaborations with secular artists. Jennings believed that gospel should be sacred, set apart from the world. To him, Franklin's blending of hip-hop, R&B, and gospel was a betrayal to the purity of the church's message. Jennings wasn't just questioning Franklin's style, he was attacking the very foundation of his faith. But here's where it gets even more intense. Pastor Jennings didn't just stop with his criticism of Franklin's performances. He went further, making a bold accusation that shook people to their core. Jennings claimed that Franklin was leading people away from God. Yes, you heard that right. He said that Franklin's music, rather than uplifting the soul, was promoting worldliness and spreading a watered-down version of Christianity. According to Jennings, Franklin's music wasn't about salvation, it was about making a name for himself in the entertainment industry. This wasn't just a casual comment. Jennings devoted an entire sermon to warning his congregation that following artists like Franklin could lead them down a dangerous spiritual path. Imagine sitting in that church, hearing a pastor tear apart one of gospel's biggest stars, warning that his influence could lead people astray. It was a shocking, no-holds-barred attack that left everyone questioning, was Jennings right, or was he simply an old-school preacher stuck in the past? But here's the craziest part. Despite the controversy, Kirk Franklin didn't immediately respond. For a while, it seemed like he was silent. Was he going to defend himself, or would he let this one slide? Fans of both sides waited for a response, and when Franklin finally spoke, no one was ready for what he had to say. The wait was finally over when Kirk Franklin broke his silence. And let me tell you, he didn't hold back. Franklin responded to Pastor Jennings with a message that left everyone shook. Instead of backing down, he came out swinging, defending his music, his ministry, and his calling in the most powerful way. But what exactly did he say? Well, Kirk made it clear that his mission was never about fame or money. To him, his music has always been about reaching people and helping them find a connection with God in a way that speaks to the times we live in. He wasn't just sitting on the sidelines waiting for someone to attack him. No, Franklin decided it was time to go toe-to-toe with Pastor Jennings, and his response was nothing short of epic. In his response, Kirk Franklin told the world that he had a purpose. He wasn't there just to entertain. He was there to bridge the gap between gospel and the everyday struggles people face. He mentioned how music can touch people's hearts in a way that words alone can't. To Franklin, his style was simply a way of reaching people where they were, using music they could relate to in order to share the message of Christ. He argued that gospel music isn't limited to just hymns and traditional choirs. Gospel can evolve and adapt, just like everything else. He didn't apologize for the way he blended genres like hip-hop and R&B with gospel. He embraced it. To him, it was about making the gospel message accessible to the masses, not about sticking to a tradition that was quickly becoming less relatable to younger generations. But the twist in his response came when he took the opportunity to call out the hypocrisy he saw in the church. Franklin didn't just defend his music. He called attention to the flaws he saw within the very church system that was attacking him. He reminded people that Jesus himself wasn't about staying within the four walls of the synagogue. He went to where the people were. Franklin emphasized that he wasn't the one leading people away from God, but that some in the church were so busy criticizing new ways of spreading the message, they were missing the point entirely. He questioned whether the church was doing enough to reach people outside the traditional walls. His message was clear. If you're not willing to evolve and reach people in ways they understand, you're part of the problem, not the solution. The tension between Franklin and Jennings didn't just stop at this back and forth. It quickly turned into something much bigger. As Franklin's response went viral, people began to take sides. Fans of both artists and even people who had never paid attention to either started chiming in. Social media blew up with debates on whether Jennings was too old school or whether Franklin was compromising the gospel's integrity. Supporters of Franklin celebrated his boldness, praising him for standing up for what he believed in. They argued that he was speaking the language of the people, meeting them where they were, something that the church, according to them, had failed to do. On the other hand, Jennings' supporters stood firm, saying that Franklin was blurring the lines between secular and sacred, and that he was a false prophet leading people astray. The debate quickly went from a simple music feud to a massive conversation about the state of the church, the evolution of gospel music, and what it truly means to spread the word of God. People from all walks of life began questioning their own beliefs about what gospel should be. Was it about preserving tradition, or was it about reaching souls in a world that was rapidly changing? Could gospel music remain pure and still speak to modern audiences? These were the questions being asked, and with every new comment or response, the story grew more intense. What had started as a simple feud between two powerful figures in the Christian community had now become a full-blown movement, one that had the potential to change the course of gospel music forever. But just when you thought things couldn't get any more dramatic, a few more bombshells were about to drop. Get ready for this next part, because it's about to get even crazier. The drama didn't stop there. As if things weren't heated enough, Pastor Jennings dropped another bombshell that shook the whole gospel community. He didn't just stop at calling out Kirk Franklin's music. Oh no, Jennings took it a step further, going after Franklin's personal life. He began attacking Franklin's character, implying that his actions didn't align with the values he was preaching. He questioned Franklin's integrity, insinuating that his fame and fortune were a result of compromising his faith. This was a whole new level of attack. Jennings wasn't just attacking Franklin's style of music anymore. He was questioning his heart, his purpose, and even his relationship with God. Now, this was where things really started to get out of hand. The personal attacks added fuel to the fire, making everything much more intense. Franklin wasn't the type of person to sit back and let these allegations slide. So, of course, he responded. But this time, his words were different. He didn't just defend his music or his ministry. He had to defend himself as a person, as a man of God. He was angry, hurt, and frustrated. Franklin shared the personal struggles he'd faced over the years, from his broken childhood to his battles with mental health and his relationship with his father. He opened up in a way that was raw and vulnerable, letting the world know that his journey wasn't as perfect as people might think. Franklin reminded his critics that nobody is perfect, and if we're all going to point fingers, we need to start by looking at ourselves first. But here's the twist. Franklin didn't just throw a pity party. He used this moment to call out the church's failure to embrace authenticity. He pointed out how easy it was for the church to criticize from a distance, but how hard it was for them to be real about their own shortcomings. He reminded everyone that the church was supposed to be a place of healing and acceptance, not a place where people were judged or torn down. Franklin called out the hypocrisy of leaders who were quick to criticize someone like him for being real, but never took the time to look at the real struggles people were facing in their own lives. He asked the tough question, why was it that people felt more comfortable going to a secular world for understanding and compassion than to their own spiritual community? The tension in the air was thick. You could feel the divide growing even wider as the drama escalated. Supporters of both Franklin and Jennings were more vocal than ever, each side digging in their heels. The people who supported Franklin didn't just back his music anymore. They began defending his personal story, calling for more understanding and compassion. They pointed out that the church was supposed to be a place of growth, not condemnation, and that Franklin's openness about his flaws made him more relatable, not less trustworthy. They argued that real people in real life needed someone to show them that it was okay to struggle, it was okay to not have it all together. Meanwhile, Jennings' supporters doubled down on their belief that Franklin was nothing but a wolf in sheep's clothing. They accused him of using his fame to promote a watered-down version of the gospel, something that made people feel good but didn't challenge them to change. They argued that by mixing gospel with secular sounds, Franklin was misrepresenting the true gospel message. To them, Franklin was no different than the world he was supposed to be separate from. It was becoming clear that this wasn't just about music anymore. It was about two different visions for what the church should be. Was the church a place for those who were struggling, a place to heal and grow? Or was it a place for only the perfect, a place for those who could follow the rules and appear without fault? The debate had reached a fever pitch, and it seemed like there was no middle ground. But just when you thought it couldn't get any crazier, there was a surprise twist that nobody saw coming. You won't believe who stepped in to make their voice heard. Stay tuned, because the drama is far from over. Just when things seemed like they couldn't get any more intense, a new player entered the drama, and the plot thickened even further. This time, it wasn't another pastor or gospel artist stepping in. It was someone from the secular world who had a massive influence. And no, it wasn't someone you'd expect to have a say in this battle over gospel music and authenticity. It was none other than Kanye West. Kanye, who had already caused waves in the gospel music world with his Sunday service events and his album, Jesus is King, suddenly took to social media to weigh in on the growing conflict between Kirk Franklin and Pastor Jennings. His tweet came out of nowhere, but it was a game changer. Kanye, the man who had been controversial in his own right for his outspoken views and eccentric behavior, publicly declared his support for Kirk Franklin. He didn't just say, "I support Kirk Franklin," though. Kanye went all in, praising Franklin for his boldness and saying that the gospel needed more artists who weren't afraid to speak their truth and be real with the people. This added an unexpected twist to the drama. On one hand, Kanye's support for Franklin was seen as a powerful endorsement, especially because Kanye had been seen as someone who was trying to bridge the gap between the secular world and the church. His comments made it clear that he believed Franklin was doing something important, something that transcended genre and embraced a message that the church needed to hear. Kanye's followers, who ranged from diehard fans to casual listeners, began to flood social media with messages of support for Franklin as well, adding more fuel to the fire. On the other hand, Kanye's involvement also raised eyebrows. Many within the church saw this as a betrayal. Here was Kanye, a man who had openly talked about his struggles with fame, mental health, and his spiritual journey, now endorsing Franklin's music. It didn't sit well with the more conservative side of the gospel community. Some questioned how anyone could take Kanye seriously, considering his past controversies and his shifting spiritual beliefs. They accused Kanye of being a distraction and of diluting the purity of the gospel. To them, his endorsement of Franklin was a sign that Franklin's music was nothing more than secular noise with a spiritual label on it. As if that wasn't enough, things got even more complicated when Kanye decided to make a public appearance with Kirk Franklin at one of his Sunday service events. The two stood side by side, both with huge smiles as the crowd cheered them on. The image of Franklin and Kanye together, both dressed in matching gospel-inspired attire, was a sight to behold. It was as if they were telling the world that they were united in their mission to make the gospel more accessible, more inclusive, and more real. But that unity was short-lived. Back on social media, Pastor Jennings and his followers were in full force, criticizing Kanye's actions and calling him out for aligning with someone they considered a false prophet. Jennings posted a video rant claiming that Kanye had been led astray and was now using Franklin as a tool to push a watered-down version of the gospel. He called out Franklin again, this time for allowing someone like Kanye, who had his own history with controversial statements, to influence his ministry. The attacks were harsh, and it felt like the battle was about to go into overdrive. But what was most interesting was that in the midst of all this chaos, Franklin remained calm. He didn't get caught up in the back and forth. Instead, he focused on his music and his ministry, continuing to speak about the importance of reaching people where they were at, no matter their background or their struggles. He stood by the message he had always preached. The gospel wasn't just for the perfect people who could follow every rule. It was for those who were lost, broken, and in need of healing. The public spectacle wasn't just about music anymore. It was about the future of gospel itself. Was it going to stay within the confines of tradition, or was it going to evolve into something that could reach a wider, more diverse audience? The church had always been a place of growth and renewal, but was it ready to embrace the kind of change that Franklin, Kanye, and others were pushing for? As the battle continued to play out in the public eye, more people began to ask themselves who was right, who was wrong, and what was the true meaning of gospel in a world that was more connected and more divided than ever before. The saga wasn't over yet, and things were about to take another unexpected turn that no one saw coming. Just when everyone thought the conflict was on the brink of resolution, the most unexpected twist came into play. The story took a dramatic turn that no one saw coming, and it would leave fans, churchgoers, and critics alike questioning everything they thought they knew about Kirk Franklin, Pastor Jennings, and the future of gospel music. It all started when a private recording surfaced online. The audio, which was leaked by an anonymous source, captured a conversation between Pastor Jennings and a well-known figure in the gospel music industry. The conversation was shocking to say the least. In the recording, Jennings could be heard making some jaw-dropping statements about his own views on gospel music. He claimed that he had been using the public feud with Kirk Franklin to gain more attention for his ministry. Jennings revealed that he didn't truly believe all the harsh things he'd said about Franklin's music, but that he was playing the game to elevate his own profile and attract more followers. This recording sent shockwaves throughout the gospel community. People were stunned. How could Jennings, a man who had presented himself as a staunch defender of traditional gospel values, admit to playing such a manipulative game? His supporters felt betrayed, and many of them began to turn their backs on him. To them, it felt like the truth had been revealed, and they were now questioning his integrity. Franklin's camp, on the other hand, was caught off guard. At first, they were hesitant to comment on the leak. They knew that responding too quickly could seem like they were trying to capitalize on the situation. But it didn't take long before Franklin himself took to social media to address the situation. His response was calm, measured, and full of grace. He posted a video in which he thanked his fans for their unwavering support and encouraged people to stay focused on the bigger picture, the message of the gospel. Kirk Franklin's reaction was telling. He didn't engage in the drama or try to stir up further controversy. Instead, he subtly reminded his followers that the focus should always be on the work they were doing to reach people who needed to hear the gospel. For him, it wasn't about the drama or the back and forth with Jennings. It was about the mission. Meanwhile, Kanye West, who had been largely quiet after his public endorsement of Franklin, surprised everyone when he released a statement. In it, he expressed his disappointment in Jennings' actions, calling out the hypocrisy of someone who claimed to be a man of faith but was willing to deceive the very people he was supposed to lead. Kanye, ever the polarizing figure, didn't hold back in his criticism, but he also acknowledged that everyone had their flaws and that the key was to grow from mistakes. His statement went viral, and people were divided in their reactions. Some praised Kanye for his boldness, while others criticized him for getting involved in something that didn't concern him. The fallout from the recording was far-reaching. It didn't just affect Pastor Jennings, it had a ripple effect throughout the entire gospel community. People began to question who they could trust, and the credibility of several prominent figures in the industry came into question. Some gospel artists distanced themselves from Jennings, while others stood by him, claiming that everyone made mistakes and deserved a second chance. But the story didn't end there. As the drama continued to unfold, a new rumor began to circulate. Pastor Jennings was allegedly in talks with a major record label to release an album. The timing of this was incredibly suspicious given the recent events. Was Jennings really planning to pivot from being a preacher to becoming a mainstream gospel artist? And if so, what did that mean for the future of gospel music? The idea of a preacher turned secular artist was a tough pill for many to swallow. If Jennings went down that path, would it further blur the lines between gospel and secular music? Could gospel music survive in an industry where the boundaries were becoming increasingly unclear? And what did that mean for artists like Kirk Franklin, who had always strived to keep their faith at the center of their work while pushing for a more inclusive approach to gospel? As the rumors swirled and the drama escalated, people were left wondering if the gospel industry was going through a radical transformation or if it was on the brink of a crisis. The battle between Kirk Franklin and Pastor Jennings wasn't just about two men anymore. It had become a symbol of a much larger struggle within the church and the music industry as a whole. Would the future of gospel music be defined by authenticity, or would it become just another part of the mainstream music machine? Was it possible for faith and fame to coexist without compromising one for the other? These questions would continue to haunt the gospel community as the saga unfolded.